Today you're going to learn, one, how to draft better copy. We're going to be doing live email rewrites, which is super exciting. Two, you're going to learn how top performing email organizations train and optimize their teams, as well as much, much more. So before we officially get started, I want to hand it over to my amazing team here. We've got Megan, Will, and Leslie. I want to give them all a platform to introduce themselves so you guys know exactly who's talking to you. So Megan, kick us off. Tell us where you're from, what you do, your experience.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tess. Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Donovan. I am the sequence specialist here at Outreach. Coming from Tampa, Florida. I know I saw someone else in the chat is also in Tampa. So enjoying some beautiful weather down here right now. I've been with Outreach for about 4 years, started as an SDR and kind of just worked my way up. So I'm super excited to be here. And hopefully y'all leave with some good takeaways today.
All right, popcorning over to Will.
All right, there it is. I was like, I think I'm clicking the mute button. I'm Will Allred, one of the founders at a company called Lavender. We help sales reps write better emails, and we help them do it faster. And so super thrilled to be here. I've got a ton of data points that I can share on any given topic because we see a whole lot of email go through our system. So yeah, that sort of sums it up.
Thanks, Will. And hand it over to Leslie.
Absolutely. Well, first off, thanks everybody for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm jazzed to be here with Megan and Will. I'm the founder of Sales Team Builder, but earlier in my career, I spent a decade both as an individual contributor as an SDR and an SDR leader. So just jazzed. I am in Montana this week, which is my hometown. So the probability that my dad picks this hour to mow the lawn is about a 9 out of 10. So heads up on that.
I love that. I could not agree more. I always feel like the minute I've got something important to do, the dog's in the background barking away, freaking out, needs to go out. It always ends up being like that. So we got your back. So let's do this. We put together some slides and a presentation for you guys. So I'm going to quickly share my screen. If you guys can just give me a thumbs up to make sure you see it. We want to make sure we've got everything live and looking good. Hell yeah. Okay, so let's actually think about what we're going to be doing today. So first, tell us, who do you sell to? So we actually put this in a poll. I'm going to deploy that poll now. This is going to really help us ensure we're talking to everybody in the audience and get a really great understanding of sort of who's in our audience, who are they talking to, because who you're talking to really matters. The most important part is understanding your audience. So it looks like we've got majority of folks coming in. We've got over 50% participated right now in the poll. Come on, guys, I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. But right now it's looking like we're about a little over 50% are talking on the enterprise level, and about 40% are SMBs, small, medium-sized businesses. So again, to give you guys one more minute, we've got 87% participated. Ooh, 89. All right, I'm going to end the poll now so that you guys are actually able to now see those results. I want this to be completely transparent so that there's no surprises, but this is sort of what we're looking at here. So we've got a small amount doing B2C, which is actually really interesting. And, we'll of course also touch on micro accounts, but we're seeing almost 100% here within the enterprise space or small and medium business space. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this so that we're going to be able to move right along. We stack these polls. Apologies, but we love a good poll here. So just one more for good measure before we officially get started. We want to know what your number one tactic is for prospecting clients. So again, about to deploy this poll. So apologies on stacking them, but this is really going to help us get started and ensure that this event is going to answer all of your questions. So just one more minute here to give everybody an opportunity to answer, but it looks like email is the overwhelming winner here by about 30%. So I'll give it one more minute, and then again, we'll share the data here so you have this information to go off of. And this is also a really interesting representation for you guys to have this information on sort of who people are talking to and what the general consensus is. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share the results with you again. So here we see it. Over 50%, well over 50% of folks are using email as number one. We've got people who are going old school calling. I love it. That's about 30%. And then we have folks who are on social. So that's maybe LinkedIn, maybe it's TikTok. We were talking about TikTok prior to this event going live. So who knows what social channels you're on, but this is great information for us to look at. So now let's think about this data. 24%, only 24% of sales emails are opened. And what we're seeing here is about 70% of sales folks stop at sending about one email. But if you continue and you're persistent with your emails, you're actually going to see a 25% uplift in response time and response back. And we've also seen that email is actually 40 times more effective than Facebook or Twitter at new customer acquisition. And actually 8 out of 10 prospects, so your audience members, want to talk to sales reps via email over any other medium. So let's think about, why is this important? Everyone's got to start somewhere. Tell us, oh, sorry, I mixed up the slides a little bit. So why is this important? I want to pose this question to our audience members here, as well as Megan, Leslie, and Will. I'd love for you guys to jump in. Why are these stats important to think about, and how do we frame our conversation from here? Feel free to jump in. Any ideas?
I'll kick. Oh, go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I'm like jazzed to see that there's so many enterprise sellers joining us today, because C-suite enterprise sales is my sweet spot. But I think that the simple answer is it's important to meet people where they're at. We need to meet our prospects where they're at, and if they prefer to communicate with us over email, which, anecdotally, I definitely know to be true at that enterprise C-suite level, it is our responsibility to communicate with them on the channel that they prefer. So that was kind of my first thought. Will, what were you thinking?
I was going to say email is the backbone of every business relationship. Whether you start a conversation on the phone or you have a conversation in social DMs, I can basically guarantee you at one point or another that's going to move into an email channel to start coordinating. So that's my take when it comes to email.
Amazing. So now let's take it back. This was a funny place for us to talk about, as we were all sort of off camera prior to this event going live. We talked about where we all started from, and it's important to think about emails and email writing as a craft, almost like a muscle that you're not just going to be able to bench press 250 overnight. And if you are, that's insane and amazing. But we all started somewhere. I really want to pose this to our lovely panelists again. Let's make it human. Let's talk about the first thing we sent, or maybe first couple months as an SDR, or in our outbound sales roles. What email tactics were we using, and how did they land? What did we learn from those? I'm curious to hear. I know Will had a really great example that we were talking about that kind of made us all chuckle. Will, if you would be so kind to share it with the audience, we would appreciate it.
Oh yeah, this is back when I was at Health Grades, which was basically Yelp but for doctors. I was like, pretty green. Thought it was such a unique, incredible idea that at the end of the month we could offer a discount. So I'm like, send these emails out at scale, volume, just copy paste, letting it rip. Hey, don't want to be a pest, but given it's the end of the month, I thought I was so clever. I get this response back, and this guy just goes like something on the lines of, it's been a few years, so the exact details are a little hazy, but basically the guy was just like, I realized that I will get the exact same offer starting the beginning of next month. It doesn't really matter at the end of the month. Please stop trying to push some, ridiculous sales tactic down my throat. And I was like, dang, that hurts.
Caught out. You were caught out.
Oh yeah. I used to do all the bad behaviors. I hope this finds you well. Just following up. Don't want to be a pest, but let's find 15 minutes on the calendar. Like, you name it, just like throwing features at people. I've been there. I've done it.
Megan, Leslie, do you guys have any funny or worthwhile stories to share with the audience, things you've learned, maybe some bad tactics you were deploying at one point and sort of how you've been able to turn that around?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, before this call, I went back and outreach from one of the first emails I ever sent. I hope at this point none of my reps are listening because it is extremely cringy. But I reached out to one of my prospects. The personalization that I chose to use was a sports team that I saw he was interested in on LinkedIn. I don't know anything about sports. Ended up this team just lost the week prior. So, okay, now I'm bringing up a loss. Basically, no personalization other than that was included. It's about 5 paragraphs long. I'm talking just about outreach, all of our features, everything we can do for this prospect while knowing nothing about him really or his company. Basically, the guy told me to F off. And I was really heartbroken because it was one of the first responses I ever got from a prospect. But at that point, I brought it up to my mentor and I was like, hey, help me out. How do I get away from getting responses like this? So obviously, learned from that. We need to be brief, to the point, definitely need to be relevant and personalized when reaching out to prospects. And then obviously focusing more on the prospect, their business, rather than outreach.
I feel like that's very relatable, Megan, because I think for me and probably many people in this call, as we started to figure out what like personalization meant, they would be like, hi, I saw you went to college. I also went to college. Should you buy my product? Like, just doing it so wrong. I also used to be the queen of bullet points. Like, in my head, I thought that I didn't need to write a short email if I just included a bunch of bullet points because it would be easier to read. Spoiler alert, that's not it.
That's great.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, thank you guys for sharing. And of course, for anybody who wants to participate in the chat, feel free to share some of your early days stories, horror story, or even success story. We want to hear them because it's going to be worthwhile for everybody so that we can all learn and all get better. So now let's look at some email prospecting theories here and strategies. I want to hand it over to Megan to talk through some of her advice so that you can essentially go from zero to hero. Use a little bit of a Disney reference there, but I love Disney and it's fun. So handing over to Megan to talk through her advice, and then we're just going to go through Will and Leslie's advice as well. So you're going to have 3 different folks and 3 different perspectives.
Awesome. So this actually ties in directly this is the exact opposite of what I was doing in my horror story in my first couple months of prospecting. But definitely make sure you take the time to do the research on the prospect or the company so that you can understand their specific strategy, any challenges that they might have in their role, and any goals. And then reference that in the first 1 to 2 lines of the email. That will let you know right there that the prospect will either continue reading if it is relevant, or if not, from there, they will either delete your email or won't respond. The rest of the email, I like to keep super brief, again, relevant, and touch on potential risks they might run into without your specific product or service. I'll pass it over to Will. I think he's next.
Yeah. So based on the emails that we see, yeah, these are like the clear things that we see over and over again when it comes to email writing that just tend to shine through. And I can obviously add some more to this, but I think one, and this is something I see a lot of sellers struggle with, is they don't know the answer to the simple question of why am I reaching out to you? And Megan kind of hit on this with her first point, which is, you start with an observation, you tie that into a challenge that they're having. It's a super clean framework to say, hey, I actually did this research on you, and I'm now proving that it's relevant research. It's not, hey, I saw you also breathe air. I breathe air too. That's fantastic. Anyway, here's my pitch, right? It's short. So the average amount of time someone's going to spend reading your email is around 11 seconds, which is blisteringly short when you think about that from a word count standpoint. That's about 25 to 50 words. It's funny, that reading time actually pairs up with the best practices that we see. So when you're writing a cold email, you actually want to keep it to 25 to 50 words to have the best chance of getting a response. An email that's 125 words versus an email with 50 words. Reducing it down to 50, you're going to see your chance of getting a response go up by about 65%. Now, simplicity, this is a key one because when somebody's reading through something in 11 seconds, they're not really reading it, they're categorizing it. And so what we see within our data is 70% of emails are written at or beyond a 10th grade reading level. And just by reducing that down to a 5th grade reading level, you'll see 50% more response. Now, I hear from a lot of people, that's hard, it's challenging, I don't know how to do it. How do I hit on all these cool things that I want to talk about? Well, a lot of times I just tell them to not talk about it. But the other things that I'll tell them to do are use simple sentence structures. I will tell them to use short, common words. Like I was talking to someone earlier today where they were like, e-commerce is just a big word. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm like, you don't really need to say the word e-commerce. They know they're in e-commerce. You don't have to remind them. So like finding ways to shorten and simplify your language and really just keep the key points. And then last, but certainly not least, is what's the goal of that reach out? So like if I know why I'm reaching out, the goal at the end of that is to generate a response. When I talk to sales teams, the thinking tends to be clouded by what they've learned within phone calls, right? And when you're on the phone with somebody, your goal is to get a meeting booked. But the analogy against email doesn't really make sense because you haven't gotten the connect yet. So once you get the connect, then you can move them to a meeting. But until you get a response, aka that phone call gets picked up, you just have to work on generating response. And so your only goal is to start conversation. So keep it super easy to get a reply.
Yeah, I love that advice, Will. I'm a huge fan of like CTA lights, those easy to reply to. Yeah, head nods immediately there. So this actually goes to, I kind of think some of the stories we all shared about like if you're in college or do you breathe air, that hyper personalized does not matter if it is not relevant and it is not valuable. And especially when folks are new to writing copy and they care, like they want to put in the effort to make it personalized, this is a really easy thing to get wrong. So I started here and just always ask yourself, like, is it just personalized or is it something that's leading with relevance and value for my prospect? Optimize for mobile. I think that's everything that was sort of Will's bullet points, right? Those tight subject lines, those really short emails so that somebody can pop it open, get to the point, and then hopefully get you that reply or respond to whatever your call to action is. And then my third one, and a lot of this is informed by having spent my career selling at the enterprise level, penetrating big accounts, selling to the C-suite. I run a lot of nurture first campaigns where I do not ask for a meeting until I'm many emails into the nurture. So I am making deposits, I am sharing a relevant case study, maybe sharing a blog post beforehand, maybe I am introducing them to somebody else that I think they would find valuable. I'm trying to do something to build my credibility and to earn the right to their calendar before I make that ask for a meeting. So these are 3 tips that have really helped me increase my open rates and my positive reply rates.
I love that. This whole reciprocity idea is so integral. It's integral and relevant in so many other areas of the entire organization. I come from a marketing and community manager background, and I very much operate on a similar principle. that you have to get that trust and that buy-in before you're even asking somebody for their time, for their resources, for their brain power, for anything. So this sort of leads us to asking everybody, let's crowdsource. Share your top tip in the chat for outbound email strategy. Maybe something that you found has worked. Maybe you want to echo the sentiment of a top tip that Megan, Will, or Leslie have presented here. Maybe it's something completely new or a tactic you're currently trying out and actually seeing a little bit of momentum. Let us know, because we all want to help each other out here and really be the best that we can be in our careers. Let me see what's going on in the chat. Jeffrey putting the time. I appreciate you. You're just about putting in the hard work. It's not going to be an overnight success. You actually have to do it. You have to learn it. You have to train in it. I appreciate that very much. I love seeing all this. This is so great. Thank you all.
I love that comment, Tess, because when we were doing our prep call, I think Megan will, that was something that all of us said, that we did not start as great email writers. Like, we didn't suddenly create great copy and sequences and cadences. Like, it was a learned skill that we had to put in the time to get where we are now, because we care about creating those meaningful connections with our buyers, like the folks that took the time out of their day to show up to this webinar.
Yeah. Leslie, I don't know about you, but like, I feel like one of the key moments where my outreach started to change strategy is when I started to get some of the outreach on the other end, and I started to like see how I received it and put that kind of thought in. I was like, hold up, I immediately know this is a sales email.
When I started seeing how callous I was about blocking emails, like getting one terrible email and just, like blocking immediately, because I was like, I don't want to hear anything else that they ever have to say based on this. And then I was like, oh no, Leslie.
You're like, oh no, I've been too harsh. Give him a chance.
A full circle moment. A full
I know.
moment.
Exercising empathy in the sales email writing world. A class. So let's shift gears a little bit. Understandably, a lot of what we've been focusing on is probably targeted a little bit towards the AE, the SDR, but we also want to talk to enablement and team leads so that you're able to mobilize your team towards success and really get everybody oriented towards that same goal and buy-in. So we did the same thing here. We parsed out everybody's advice. So you're going to see 3 different perspectives here. We're going to go through them. We'll start at Megan. I want to hand over to you to really share what some things and actionable insights team leads can do to really enable their teams for success and to see that outreach grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I work really close with our enablement team and our sales managers and leads, specifically on making sure that good quality emails are being written, and working kind of one-on-one to come up with refresher sessions. I know it's really easy once you get in the habit of doing something to really stick on that one thing. And the truth of the matter is this is an ever changing kind of field. What worked 6 months ago might not work to this day. Likewise, what worked a year ago definitely isn't working today. So just making sure that you have these kind of refresher sessions with your reps to make sure that the emails that they're writing are fresh, they're relevant, and they're to the point. And using managers and leads as additional reinforcement for those lessons as well. Also working really closely to make sure you create content that scales. Instead of starting from scratch with every single piece of content, it's really important to, again, scale that across different teams, use cases, personas to really save time. Obviously, you're putting in a lot of time to come out with quality content. Make sure that there is a way for your reps and managers to find that. And then lastly, make sure you're sharing the results of your content often and honestly with your team. And if there needs to be improvements there, working cross-functionally with sales managers, team leads, enablement to really hear what's resonating across the board. Cool.
Megan, that's great. I was looking forward to your answer because I know your team is definitely like in the throes of that. So that's
Yeah.
cool. Um, so when I'm talking to team leads or enablement, my conversations tend to mirror a lot of what Megan's talking about when it comes to refreshing your messaging often. I'm a huge fan of continuously experimenting. Like if there's not an experiment running, the question is like, are you learning? Are you getting better? And if that answer is no, like that's probably a bad sign. One of those key things when it comes to like things like deliverability is varying up your content and trying different things. But some of the other things that I like to talk to enablement and team leads about is like trying to understand why the messaging works, and really focusing the conversation not on like what, but why things are happening. And this really kind of comes together into this idea of, I call like frameworks. Leslie, you were talking about making deposits. One of my favorite deposits I like to make within my outreach is actually a outreach blog. The then VP of sales at Segment wrote a blog post with y'all about how she used templates to like scale up this idea of like frameworks within the org, where she had like true trust in her sales team to go out and like write everything ad hoc, but she set up a system within outreach where it could actually scale. And I'm like, that's absolutely brilliant, right? Because one, we don't get like trapped in this messaging that doesn't scale, where we're not like trapped in this like odd, like trying to piece a template to like some piece of personalization where it just feels like you're like sticking duct tape on it. It's more about like, here are the building blocks that we're using to create this email. Here's what each piece of that email is trying to accomplish. And when you actually break emails down that way, you understand why things are working, you understand why the messaging is working, and you can start to help that team scale up that conversation. And so as they run into new reasons to reach out, or new observations, and they're trying to tie those things back to problems, they're not as clunky in the process of doing so. The last thing I didn't add on here that I would add is the idea of creating a like process for building personalization. And sort of surprisingly, I start that process with what you do. So if you have a clean understanding of what you do, then you can understand the problems that you solve, who you solve them for, the external indicators that those problems exist, and you can actually start to set up your outreach, like your outreach setup to speak to those particular triggers and how they tie to particular problems, so that your reps are in a position where they can start to experiment and learn. So those would be my points.
I love that. I especially love the number 5, get to a place where you can trust your sellers. I mean, I think that's good advice that maybe should be repeated on like every webinar about any sales topic ever. And I feel like my number 1 pairs perfectly with that, right? Like, teach your reps, coach your reps on what best practices, give them that really strong foundation of the things we know work the greatest number of times. And then encourage that creativity, encourage that ownership, because that's what makes this job fun. To get to be a little playful or creative, or maybe you test out a GIF in one of yours, or maybe you try video at touch 5, and I think that's what makes writing cold copy super fun. And you see here, like, A/B test everything, right? We can start with the foundations. We can start with what we know works, and then have some fun with it. A/B test everything. We talked about this at the top of the webinar, which is meeting our prospects where they are at. I think everybody would probably agree that that means a multi-channel approach. We heard that the data says 8 out of 10 prospects want us to communicate with them via email. So certainly, to Will's point, like making email a backbone, but including those social touch points, including phone calls, and then even getting creative in there with videos, with maybe a LinkedIn voice note, whatever it is, just something to help you stand out a bit from the pack with your approach. And something specifically for team leads, because I know as a sales leader myself, I've often been under pressure from that next layer up to hit metrics. And I think that there's been at least one time in everybody's career where they've been like, why? Like these KPIs are pointless, but metrics do matter to some extent, even if that might be an unpopular opinion to share. So think very strategically and very intentionally about balancing quantity with quality outreach. And for me, one of the easiest ways to balance quality and quantity is to use deep segmentation or trigger events. And that kind of speaks to that scalability, right? So your campaign might only be going out to 12 people because they're the 12 CFOs in pharma of Fortune 250 companies who have only been in seat for 12 months, right? Like it's super segmented. So you know that it's going to be highly relevant and valuable, but not every single piece of every single email then needs to be hyper personalized to that individual. So I think that's a nice way to strike a balance.
Thank you, everybody. I feel like there have been a couple of themes that have come up with everybody's advice and every perspective, one of which certainly is the scalability piece that Megan first hinted on, and then Leslie continued on about. It's scalability, it's automation, it's working smarter, in addition to working a little harder, but not crazy harder for the amount that you're able to get back in return. And then it seems like always be testing. I should probably just tattoo that across my forehead at this point, because testing and iteration and a commitment to that is integral not only in the betterment and focusing your email strategy, but also just approach to life. I think all of us want to get better in our careers and want to adapt to new technologies, new ways of communicating, new ways of working, dare I say, adapting to the quote unquote new normal. But it's super important that we all do that. And we're all here because our sales techniques have allowed us to actually thrive in this sort of post-COVID world that we are now all living in. So it's an important commitment to iteration and not being afraid of testing that I think all of us have really leaned on as the key to success. So let's now look a little bit at subject lines. I know everyone is going to be so excited about this. We were all very excited about it when we were talking about what we actually wanted to share and how we wanted to give you all a little bit of added value today. So subject lines became an interesting topic here because they could have a webinar of their own, truthfully. You could probably talk about subject lines and like 100 characters for 100 minutes. So we're going to break it down, try to make it as simple and as bite-sized as possible. Again, we have the 3 perspectives that we're going to share with you guys. We'll start off with Megan again, talking a little bit about subject lines and how to optimize them.
Yes. And Tess, to your point, subject lines is one of my favorite subjects. So I'll leave you with a couple things we live by, couple pieces of advice. We'll keep it short, but get creative with your subject lines. Creative subject lines, including an emoji, asking a question, getting creative, but making sure that it ties into the body of the email so it is relevant. Keeping those subject lines short, sweet, and relevant. Most people today are checking their email on their phone, in between meetings, on meetings, running their kid to soccer practice. So really important to think about how that comes through on the other side, to Leslie's point a couple slides earlier. So typically coach to keep those subject lines to 4 to 5 words max to ensure that the entire subject line shows up on your mobile device. Keep it casual and human. Formatted subject lines have a way less chance of being open. I know back in the day, a really popular one was the prospect's company name and the company that you work at. Those formatted subject lines, again, seem very robotic, automated. So get a little creative, make them a little bit more personal. And then something we've also seen a big success using was a simple call to action in the subject line as well. Interested to hear your thoughts on that, Will, as I know you have a lot of data. So I'm sure you can use that as a segue into your slide.
So it's funny. I love the data on this because people always ask for it. But one of the things that we find in our data when it comes down to the individual company by company basis is this is one of our most variable variables. So like I could tell you 2-word subject lines are the best, but I know teams that we work with that 4 lines or 4 words are the best. I think it's key to understand the perspective before any of these things. So like my perspective is when I'm writing a subject line, the key thing that I'm trying to do, and I kind of referenced this earlier, is this idea of like, I'm trying to avoid a mental spam filter where the person sees it and they quickly categorize it as this is a sales note. And so some of those things that like fall into that category for me are, numbers like 2x more, or like a question, want to increase your cold email reply rates, right? When you see those things, you're more likely to be like, that might be a sales email, right? But if it's just like template issues, the odds that could have come internally, externally, it's not like, I'm not saying like Q4 email results, right? Where I'm like teasing that like this is actually something internal. It's almost like got this camouflage though to avoid tipping off any red alerts of like, this is going to be your typical sales email. The other thing that I think is important to recognize though is the perspective of your buyer. So your email, the initial read through, is 8 times more likely to happen on a mobile device. I imagine all of you have your phone sitting right next to your computer. And so the 2 things you see when you open up an email on your phone is you're going to see the subject line and you're going to see the preview text. And that is why subject lines are important, but so is those first few words that you say. It's why Megan started it off where she talked about, starting the email with personalization is so key. It's why I'm a big fan of it. It's why Leslie's a big fan of it. It's just like starting off with that, hey, I actually did some research here, showing your homework is so impactful because they see that and it's like they see it on their mobile command center here and they're like, oh, okay, what is that? I'll open it up. So those are my bits of advice there.
Yeah, I feel like my advice is like very like it's a bit repetitive to Will, what you and Megan have shared. I mean, optimize for mobile. Number 1, I stick with 2 words or 20 characters. I really prefer like super short subject lines, but it's so funny because like my next one is don't use punctuation, but literally one of my best performing subject lines right now is any interest ? So A/B test everything because you really don't know what's going to work. Don't use all caps. I literally don't know why I keep seeing email subject lines with all caps. Let's just let this one die. So I had to include it. And then I think, Megan, this was your number 1 is get creative, like be playful. To my earlier point, that's what makes this job so fun. So like I love alliterations. That might just be me, but they work really well. So maybe like my top takeaway from this slide, like follow the best practice, but at the end of the day, like get creative and be playful with your subject lines because that's how you're going to connect with folks.
Love that. I've just decided to become a little bit unhinged in the chat and just start yelling at everyone. It's why caps don't work because it looks like I'm completely unhinged, just yelling at you to open up my email. So we have a little bit of a fun midway or 2/3 of the way through our webinar break, which is to talk about some of our favorite subject lines. So what we're actually going to do is Megan, Will, and Leslie have all come prepared with their favorite subject lines that they're going to share. And of course, in the chat, please feel free to share any subject lines that you've seen or that you've used that have been really, really great. And we're actually going to vote on who has the best subject line. And at the end, we will award Sales Hackers First Best Subject Line Award. So stay tuned for that, because that really is going to be, the creme de la creme. It's like the Oscars. Make sure you have your acceptance speech ready to go. And apologies for the mail being delivered exactly at this moment. Of course it is, because we live at home now and we work at home, and that's how things go. So Megan, tell us some of your favorite subject lines. And of course, we want to hear from Will and Leslie too. So feel free, guys, just to hop in whenever.
Yeah, I think my all around favorite subject line typically includes the prospect's name and a stat about their industry. I know in Will's slide a couple slides ago, he told me to avoid doing both of those things. However, on our side, we do have the performance metrics to back that up. So we've seen a really high success rate with, again, mentioning the prospect's name and a stat in their industry. If, let's say an account, a company is on a top 5 list, on a top 10 list, mentioning that briefly.
Feel free to hop in, guys. Any subject lines you guys have?
I was gonna say, I feel like my little data point got a shout there. So that is the danger in which comes with like subject line data in particular, is it's one of those things that tends to be very localized when it comes to your best practice. So always be testing. Back to the continued theme here.
Hashtag always.
So Megan, no doubt that y'all have the data on that. I was talking to a team the other day where a gal in a similar spot to you was telling me they've got it tested down to, they know which buyer persona enjoys puns within their cold email compared to others. So apparently sales leaders love puns, but they also sell into the marketing department, and marketing leaders don't. And I'm like, I love that y'all know that down to like a percentage of reply rate. I don't have a like favorite when it comes to subject lines. So it's typically, it's something that feels internal. It's, maybe like the topic of conversation, and then like issue. Like I had that example, template issue, or it'll be, honestly, one of our best performing subject lines, is ironic, is sales email. So I'll leave it with that. Sales email is our best performing subject line at the moment.
I mean, I'm going to have to test that. Absolutely. I feel like I have a whole list of favorites, because like my co-hosts, I love subject lines. I don't know what that says about us that we geek out so hard on cold copy, but I'm with you. 2 that I'll share though. One is feedback & guidance, feedback and guidance. I have used this at SMB, mid-market, enterprise, across different verticals, from like HR to marketing to like, this is one that works consistently. And I think it's because when we ask people for guidance, we're sort of centering their sage wisdom. So there's maybe like a bit of an ego play. But regardless of who I'm sending that to, or like what point of the campaign it's in, or any other A/B test, it sticks around like a 50% open rate. Like it is a consistently good one. And then another one that I love is publication hyphen one word. So like Reuters hyphen resilience, WSJ for Wall Street Journal, WSJ hyphen crypto, or like whatever the one word topic is. That performs extraordinarily well. And when we think about leading with deposits before we make asks, I find that sharing deposits that have absolutely nothing to do with your company, so you're not even pushing your own agenda, you're just sharing with them something that you think they would find valuable, that subject line with follow-on email checks a lot of boxes.
Okay, so we've got all 3 suggestions for the top resonating subject line. So we are going to vote. So I'm going to launch the poll. We're going to keep it a secret. So I'm not going to deploy the results afterwards, but I really hope you guys all vote. Let us know whose subject lines you feel you would open if you were on the other side of receiving them. We're getting some, oh, guys, this is very interesting, very neck and neck. I cannot disclose where we're at, but these are very, very enlightening. All right, guys, we've got just a little over 50% participated. So I'll give you guys 30 more seconds to get your thoughts in, because this is really for the coveted prize, everybody. This is how you know you've made it in life. So, make sure you really think hard about this one, because it's a real award with very few actual physical manifestations of the award. I'll be giving you an Outreach water bottle. Okay, I'm going to stop the poll because it looks like there is a clear winner, although I will not tell you who just yet. You'll have to tune in to see. But I'd argue one of the most fun things is just about to happen. We are going to do the live email teardown. Hell yes. Whoop, 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 whoop. So this is what you guys have all been waiting for. I'm going to read out this email, if that's okay, as you guys can also read it to yourselves, but just so that you can hear it aloud. Hello, Leslie. We are a certified Salesforce consulting firm that offers an entire range of Salesforce services. We specialize in Salesforce implementation services, Salesforce communities, Salesforce custom development, migration from Classic to Lightning, Financial Service Cloud, Einstein bots, Salesforce CPQ, Lightning components, Pardot, and marketing automation, data migration and integration, Salesforce One mobile apps, Einstein Analytics, etc. The clientele that opted our Salesforce services are Samsung, YMCA, SNet, FranSmart, Asurion, etc. We would offer you a dedicated project manager who are committed to clearly understanding your needs and translating them into the correct technical language. It ensures reliable Salesforce development services with faster turnaround times and better ROI. Please suggest your good time to discuss. Okay, everybody. All I see is the chat popping off. I don't think I've seen the chat this aggressive. So we're going to look at how we each rewrote this. I'm glad you guys are all, this is making me laugh so much, but I don't want to laugh at somebody else's misfortune. We are here to learn. So Megan, take it away. Tell us what you would suggest. If you were this person's team lead, how are you going to get them from point A to point B and actually seeing some engagement with this kind of email?
Yeah, so this is my version of the rewrite. So again, in the subject line, I'm mentioning the prospect's first name, and then following that up with better decisions resulting in a higher ROI, which to me is going to spark interest. I'm interested what's happening in this email. Hi, Leslie. Many of the clients we've talked to struggle with Salesforce development services, wasting valuable time, money, and resources. We're working with customers like Samsung and Asurion to ensure we clearly understand your needs and translate them into the correct technical language, which improves turnaround times and directly results in higher ROI. Do you have 30 minutes this Tuesday to see how we can help your team win the same results? So a couple of things I did here. Obviously, the email is much shorter. I touched on a couple prospect pains. So struggling with Salesforce development services, wasting time, money, valuable resources. I'm mentioning 2 customers that we work with, Samsung and Asurion, instead of the long list of names that were rambled. I'm tying the subject line higher ROI into the body of the email in the last couple words of the second paragraph. And then I'm specifically asking for a day time to meet. We've seen a much higher response rate to emails with a call to action that have a specific day rather than kind of leaving it open-ended. Let me know when you have time to chat.
Love that. Thank you so much, Megan. Let's see Leslie's version.
So full disclosure, we did not read each other's rewrites before this. So I think it's interesting how similar Megan's and mine are. So, I mean, like the same thinking, right? Like I made it much shorter. I started with the problem statement. Something I did love about their last email, I don't think they did it right, but they had an element of social proof in there that we work with Samsung and Asurion. It's hilarious that we literally pulled the same two out of that long list. So I wanted to pull that social proof tied to the outcome. They now have happier customers. And then the thing I hated most about their email was, you give me a good time for you. I was like, so you want me to do more work after you just made me read this atrocious email? Hard pass. I went with a CTA light. Is it worth learning how we could do the same for you? I did, after I wrote this, I put it through Lavender. I got a 92. So pretty good. And sense check for my subject line. That's another subject line I use consistently that has a really high open rate. So that's why I went with that one. Yeah, short and sweet.
Love it. And also love the lavender shout out. Well done on your 92%. You aced it. So that perfectly leads us into Mr. Lavender himself, Will. Let's hear Will's rewrite.
Love it. 92s get replies. That's incredible. All right. So I did HubSpot to Salesforce, trying to make some sort of pretense about Leslie's business. Said, given your advisory work, do you see many clients switching from HubSpot to Salesforce? As Leslie mentioned, she's dealing with a lot in the enterprise world. So I imagine they're starting to make that change as they grow. This is our forte. We've worked well with other consultants in the past. Curious if you bring in partners often. Very short, very simple. My only focus here is on generating conversation. One of the things that you'll see is that last CTA. It's not a question. One of the things that we see in our data is when you start to ask more questions, the reply rate falls off. In fact, you could ask 0 questions and get a better response rate on average than 2 questions. And it's because you're starting to split the reader's attention. So that was a lot of the thinking there, is I wanted to showcase how you can do a CTA without asking a question.
Thanks, Will. So now, as we wrap up, we're in the final 5 minutes. And of course, we want to set aside a 30 seconds to announce our winner. We're going to give you guys 3 sets of takeaways here and advice for how you can actually synthesize all of what we shared today into actionable items. So Megan, take it away.
I think the biggest one is what I touched on kind of at the beginning here. Tailor your value prop to the prospect's risk and pain. Again, make sure it's relevant. Be clear. Rambling off a message full of technical terms that only you really understand isn't going to make you sound smart, and it's not going to get a response from your prospect either. More than likely, if they don't understand the terms you're using, there is no connect, so they will delete the email, or you just will never get a response from them. And then the last one, if there is any takeaway you take from this, is always, always, always be A/B testing before making any updates to messaging. It is something, obviously, the 3 of us live and die by. Yeah, that's what I'll leave you with.
Fabulous.
That's great. Okay, so my 3 things is you could probably say less than what you thought you needed to. So like if you find yourself feeling the need to give them more information so they can make a decision, probably a bad sign. Because in reality, it's not about you, it's about them. And so starting off with that personalization and really making that clear from the get-go that that's your reason for being there. It's one of those things that I've found, if you make it about them, you have a really clear point on why you're reaching out, it makes it really streamlined, and you can start to cut a lot of stuff out of your writing. And all of those things are going to help you with the main goal, which is to get a response. It's not to inform them. It's not to warm up your cold call. It is to get a reply. That is the only goal. And then I included my little CTA tip as well.
I love that. I love Ross's comment too. It's not a gift if the person wouldn't want it. Too true. So first one, earn the right to your buyer's inbox and to their calendar. That is like the core of what I think of when I think of buyer-centric selling. We talked a lot about email today, but that can certainly be through great social touch points as well. I think only like 19% of people were leading with social. So take that multi-channel approach, earn the right to your buyer's inbox and calendars. This is one we didn't really talk about, but please just stop sending unsolicited calendar links and just spamming folks. It makes all of us look bad. And let's not do that anymore. Particularly with the calendar links. I don't send like links, videos, anything besides just text until usually email 3, just for deliverability purposes. So that's something to think about. And then my top takeaway is make it fun. This should be fun. We should be having fun doing this job, doing this work. So be creative, be playful, make it fun.
I love this. Well, thank you to all three of you, Megan, Will, and Leslie, for amazing insights, amazing advice, for making today fun. And I would be remiss if we did not crown our Best Subject Line Award winner. So the award goes to, I'm going to do a drum roll with my 2 pens. Leslie, congratulations.
I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I didn't want to win this imaginary award. That's how competitive I am.
I love it. Well, congratulations. Here is the imaginary award. It is a Outreach water bottle.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you again to all three of you for unbelievably insightful information that you guys were sharing today. And of course, thank you to our audience. I know we're just at the hour, so thank you for sticking with us. This recording, as well as the deck, will be sent out so that you guys will have all this information in your inbox in the next 24 to 48 hours. So we were happy to see you here today. We hope to see you at the next one and hope you guys are all staying safe and healthy.